Hi guys, today I'm going to give you a few extra tips on how to write an essay, especially under examination conditions. So whilst this is mostly for students writing an English essay, the principles can apply to your other subject areas also. So all this is presupposing that you already know that an essay has an introduction that has your thesis and your introduction of the text, a body that gives examples and elaborates on the points you introduce, and a conclusion which ties all your ideas together. If something is under examination conditions, typically this means that you have a time limit and usually you feel like you don't have enough time to write the essay. And the other condition is you normally will not have seen the question. Okay, so this can make for really stressful circumstances. I'm like so stressed right now, which is why we're doing this video to give you a few extra tips to make sure that you maximize your results. Today I'm going to tell you what to do under these conditions and also what not to do. Here are a list of things that students do to be clever that don't actually help their results. Some students in their introductions list all the techniques they'll be analysing. For example, they will write, "The composer demonstrates this using similes, metaphors, puns, assonance, sibilance, onomatopoeia." Students can use this listing approach in relation to themes also. You're way better off spending your time developing your thesis and writing something really specific about the particular question you're given. Next, students love to use big words to make their work seem very fancy. Fancy! However, sometimes it's obvious that the student doesn't really know what the word means or how to use it in a sentence. It is quintessentially a recollection of his transcendental experience. If there is a word that's new to you or one that you don't use often that you'd really like to put in your essay, just check with your teacher to make sure that you're using it correctly. Many students write really complicated sentences when what they really want to say is quite simple, and as such the meaning of what they're saying gets lost. The persona's isolation renders him an alien. Booyah. A really good rule to abide by is if you couldn't say it to your teacher or the person next to you, then it probably doesn't make sense. Sorry. We do want to keep your writing formal, which means when you're writing your essay, make sure you do not use contractions. This means don't say things like don't, won't, shouldn't, isn't. Instead, you'll use the two parts of the word. Could not, would not, should not. Breaking up these words into their two separate parts is one way to make your work much more formal. Do not refer to lines in a poem or book or film as quotes unless that text is quoting somebody else. This is a really common one to make a mistake with. Most examples that you get from text are just that. They're examples or evidence or lines. So instead of saying quotes, you might want to say this example shows, or this line shows, or this is evidence of. I would do my best to avoid using quote under any circumstance, just to be safe. Some students, in an attempt to be clever, repeat the wording of the question ad nauseam. This means you say the wording again and again and again, and it's pretty clear that you're just throwing it in there to trick the marker. I'm so clever. This is an attempt to trick the marker into thinking that you've actually answered the question, and it's more than likely that you haven't yet. We really do see through this, and to be honest, sometimes you might get lucky and it will work for that particular example. But in most cases, it's really obvious that you haven't really thought about the question. This is a big one. Regurgitating information or a pre-prepared essay is especially frustrating because it shows you haven't thought deeply about the question. This is because often it's obvious that you really know the text, but unfortunately, if you don't answer the question, we can't pay you those high marks. This leads perfectly into what you have to do to get the best marks possible. Answer the question. 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 To truly do this, it means that many things have to happen prior to taking that exam. Okay, but they're things that you can do and you're already being prepared for in class. Complete all your class activities and any homework you get as well. Normally your teacher wants you to engage with the topic. Okay, and a lot of the concepts that we study in English have something to do with ourselves. So what I tell my students to do is look into their hearts. Oh my god. I'm like so bored. Oftentimes, if you're thinking about the concept, then the answers will just come to you. Okay, English after all is about exploring human nature and the world around us. Know your core text. Like really know it. Like really know it. Like really know it. Really know it. That means reading it from cover to cover and knowing your quotes, knowing your examples, know what happens in every chapter or in every scene. So important that you know it, because the question you get may ask for something so specific that suits one particular part of the text perfectly. And if you haven't read that part or haven't really thought about it before, it means you could miss out on quite easy marks. And some other useful tips to help you nail your HSC essay. You need to use rich related materials. So you have your core text and then you have your related text. Make sure this related text is actually quite sophisticated. If it is too simplistic, it means that you may not be able to use it to answer that question, or you may only be able to write a really brief amount. Have a variety of complex text to draw upon, because you might find that one of these suits a question really well, whereas the other doesn't, okay? And you just weigh out which one will be better for that particular question. Have an awesome thesis. Okay, for your thesis to be really good, firstly you have to show that you're really engaged with the topic. So you've been thinking about it for a long time, you formulated your ideas, you probably said something quite general to start with. Okay, that's part one. Part two of having an awesome thesis is really closely engaging with that question you're given. So find a way to weave that question into your already established beliefs about the topic. Now, many students totally leave out a thesis. They may restate the question or introduce the text they'll be talking about, but they don't even say what they believe about the topic. Having a thesis is an easy way to get marks. Okay, just by having it there, it can take you from being a D to being a C. And if you really develop a thesis, that will take you from being a C to being a B. Really important. You need to use the best evidence possible to answer the question. A lot of students really want to show that they know so much about the topic and so much about their text that they just regurgitate all the information. We're so proud that we've worked really hard that we just want to share all the love with the marker. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't work. A lot of the time, if you feel like you're probably naturally going to get a D, it can bring you up into the C range because you have the information there. But if none of that really answers the question, you can't move beyond the C. So to really answer the question, you have to have the guts to say, okay, I know all of this, but I'm just going to take this little part here and I'm going to flesh it out because this is a part that suits the question. What most people do is they think of everything they know and they go, here, take it, bleh, bleh. So remember, have the guts to say, okay, I'm going to keep this, but you can have this part because that's what you really need. That's what I need to get my marks. Make sure that you write enough on your related text. So a lot of the time people are told that their core text needs to take up the majority of the essay. That's okay if it's about 2/3, but you have to have at least 1/3 on your related materials. There are some modules that we do in English that are based around the technical process, and there are others that are more conceptual. So for example, survival, conflict, and belonging. When you're doing a conceptual study, it's really important that you put the concept or idea first. So even though it's really great that you understand the technical aspects of a text, and by the way, they should be in there because it's about the relationship between the responder and composer, we actually don't need so much technical jargon, okay, if the conceptual approach is lacking. So if you haven't really said anything specific about, say, belonging, but you're telling us every single poetic technique that the writers used, then you're not going to get the same marks as somebody who forgets the technical aspect and talks about the concept. So here are little tricky tips to get you from probably being a C into a B range. Now, some of these are the lazy way, okay? So they're only if you get super desperate. What you can do is top and tail every paragraph. This means that starting with a focus sentence that links to the question and ending with a closing sentence that links to the question can get you a few more marks if everything in between happens to work pretty well. Using a focus sentence to set up your paragraph can actually really make your essay much stronger compared to not having it. When you have a focus sentence, your reader knows exactly what's going to follow on, and we're also aware that you've been thinking about the question. And this is a really good thing. Time management can be a really big issue under exam conditions. One way to combat this and make sure that you actually get through the essay, or that you get the best marks given the circumstances, would be this. Firstly, you need to plan out your essay. If you spend 1 or 2 minutes just getting your head around the question, what that will do is buy you enough time to make sure that your essay stays on track and doesn't deviate from the question. What we find is some students write their way into a C or a B response. That means that every now and then you might start off a little bit sloppy, and then as you're writing, the lights all switch on. Okay, and then that last part of your essay is actually quite good. If you want to get to the next band or the next level of attainment, what you need to do is just, for 2 minutes, go through and plan your essay, plan your strategy, think about your thesis, and then work out which paragraph is going to come first, second, last, and so on. The first paragraph in the body of your essay needs to be the paragraph that answers the question the best. This is because if you do run out of time, you've got your strongest points first, your strongest examples first, so that if you do have to get rid of a paragraph and skip to the conclusion to meet the time constraints, you're safe. You've probably already answered the question. Imagine that after you write an essay, a teacher picks up your work. They choose 1 paragraph, and out of that paragraph, they choose 3 lines. Would those 3 lines or that paragraph have answered the question? If the answer is no, you probably haven't engaged with the question or your text. So what I used to like to do is write an essay to a practice question and then look through and see how many times I was just waffling on and how many times what I was saying was actually relevant. If you notice that you're doing a lot of the waffle, then the planning time is definitely going to be useful to you. So, you want to be an A student. Me? An A? Oh, shucks. To get an A, we are looking for people who have real insight. Once a teacher reads an essay that answers the question all the way through, has really deep personal insight and is using the best examples from the text, and of course it's well written, when we get to the end of reading that paper, there is no doubt that that is an A response. Teachers love reading A-level responses because they have the ability to teach us something that we might not have thought about yet. Approaching a common idea from a different perspective. So it's really entertaining, and what we can tell is that the kids are actually feeling and engaging with and really passionate about what they're writing. Okay, this is so important to get that A result. So these are some extra special tips to make sure that you're prepared for writing under examination conditions. No, no, no. This is how you look to me. Fancy, like I'm young. I'll do the other eyebrow. Nope.